Everybody, Kellen Harned with you. Hope you're having a good day today. We are in for it tonight with more storms moving our way. So we're going to spend the next few minutes here just sort of diving through the data that we have. Most of that's going to come from the radar. A little bit new information coming in. You may have seen Wavy pop that up, but we do have updates coming in from the Storm Prediction Center as well. So I'll read you what that says. A lot of folks jumping in saying hello, and we say hello back. We'll let some folks get in. The news alert just went out. So if you have the Wave News app, you're just seeing it. So we'll let some folks get dialed in from there. A lot of folks are watching from the weather app, and several more, a few thousand of you watching on all of our streaming devices. So we appreciate that. We're going to jump to it here in just a second where we can take some of your questions too. And let me just pull up some of the info. So I'll get the computer set here so we have everything ready to go. All right. First of all, you can see the alert day is out until 3 a.m. That'll be the very final time. It'll be out of here by then. With that said, we still have the opportunity to see some of those strong storms moving past between now and then. The greatest time for Louisville is probably going to be within the next few hours here. I'd say 10 to midnight would be a pretty wide gap for us. So let's talk about what we have, the threats. Obviously, wind is the main threat across the area. That's followed by some flooding. Some of these storms, while they are moving, they contain heavy rain. So if it lingers for any length of time, we're going to really accumulate decent rainfall. The tornado threat is not zero, but it is low, and we still have a hail threat even into the evening hours here. So everything's on the table. The heat advisory that we had no longer in our area, so that's the good news. Of course, it got hot today, but it was more humid than anything. Temperatures were on target. I mean, we were right in the upper 80s. That's where we should be. Humidity values very high, so that pushed that heat index closer to almost 10 degrees above the actual temperature. So while our temperature came in near 90, the heat index was closer to 100. And that's what prompted the heat advisory for today. Look at these dew points. This is wild. When we talk about dew points, upper 70s, low 80s, that's about as high as they get. Lower 80s, we rarely see that. Even in our most humid time a few weeks back, we really didn't have very many in the low 80s. But today you can see Madison's there, Bedford's there, Jasper, Fort Knox, Bardstown. What this means is that gives us an idea of how much moisture is in the atmosphere. When the temperature equals the dew point, the relative humidity is 100%. So when we have dew points upper 70s, low 80s, we're dealing with a lot of moisture in the atmosphere. And that in turn equals fuel for thunderstorms. So we have it. You're going to see a lot of lightning with these storms tonight. These are current feels like temperatures. So it feels like it's 97 outside, 100 degrees Owensboro and Evansville. Enough about the temperatures. Let's get into the radar, and this will be our focal point for the evening. First of all, let me just zoom out and point out there are no tornado warnings. I'll just put on the warnings. Severe thunderstorm warnings, yes. Tornado warnings, no, not at this point. But we do have severe thunderstorm warnings. So let me get to those, and I'll let folks know what we're watching. In the viewing area right now, or in our area, we have the severe thunderstorm warnings that are coming out of parts of Jackson and Jennings County. The newsroom's making calls on that to see if there's been any real damage with those storms. The radar indicating extreme wind with this as it moves into parts of Scott County, Jefferson County, Indiana. And I guess it does include far northern parts of Clark County. So that's the warning for considerable threat of wind damage, because the estimated wind speed by the radar upwards of 70 miles an hour. That's impressive. So that warning is in place for wind. All right. We continue to track that through the southern Indiana communities. Moving toward Kaminsky, DuPont would be next in line. Strong thunderstorm impacting Harrison County, Indiana. So I'll show you the radar in just a second, but I wanted to go through these warnings. This gives you an idea of where some of the stronger winds are. Moving into northern Scott County, Austin, Indiana could get clipped, likely to be just east of Austin, Indiana. I'll zoom in even tighter. You can see it's moving past Uniontown, Crothersville. That's right along I-65. That's a pocket of heavy wind there. You can see it right there. And then another one over near Kaminsky. There's another one. So those are two strong areas of wind that we're watching on the radar. That's the velocity we're looking at. When we look at the reflectivity, we can see the heavy rain that's falling. And obviously, we've overlaid the severe thunderstorm warnings with that as well. The latest warning goes until 8:45. So it's what we're looking at until 8:45. Right now, it's 8:15. Another 30 minutes still left on that. All right, back to our home view, and allow me to put on just a couple of things, and then I'll read you some of the information from the Storm Prediction Center. And the latest, and you can see this red shaded area. Let me turn the radar off for a second. So let's focus on this red shaded area here, okay? This was the latest, what we call mesoscale discussion. So the Storm Prediction Center, located in Norman, Oklahoma, issues watches. Warnings come from the local National Weather Service office. But in addition to the watches, the Storm Prediction Center also issues frequent updates on what could be happening in terms of the atmosphere. We call those mesoscale discussions. This one was just issued just a few minutes ago. And this is what they said about that storm or about that cluster of storms moving our way. So they issued the watch. The severe weather threats expected to increase over the next few hours in central and eastern Kentucky with the approach of storms from Indiana and southwestern Ohio. Damaging wind gusts are the main threat. Weather watch has been issued. So again, we're dealing with a moderately to strongly unstable atmosphere. We talked about the fuel being the moisture. We have the obvious dew points that indicate that. But we also have what we would call the CAPE that's upwards of 2,000 to 3,000 joules per kilogram. And it's not important to know the measurement of that, more so as to that any time we're over 2,000, that's a pretty big number for this time of year in the environment that we have. So we are unstable and we have the ability to see these storms move in. As we increase the low-level jet, we'll also have a little bit of shear out ahead of these line of storms. So we could pose that damaging wind threat right into the area. It's going to be isolated. This isn't going to be a big derecho or something like that that you may have heard terms of. But we could see some decent wind. And if we see repetitive rain, flooding could be an issue. All right, back to the radar we go. Let's talk about the storms to our north, and then I'll try to show you some video of some of these wild storms that happened in parts of Wisconsin, northern Illinois today. We had tornadoes on the ground, did a lot of damage up that way. You can see outside of the severe thunderstorm warnings that we have labeled across parts of Scott, Clark, Jefferson County, southern parts of Jennings, and southeastern Jackson County, we also have a cluster of storms with severe thunderstorm warnings over in Sullivan and Vigo County, Indiana. So that's over just south of Terre Haute. So those thunderstorms also severe. Outside of that, there are no other warnings. So that's the good news, right? This isn't severe weather for everybody, but the places that get it could see some strong winds. And I suspect that we're going to continue to see an uptick in some of these storms as they move farther to the south into this very juicy environment that we have across the area. And I'll walk you through that as we look at sort of the setup. So let me just walk through what we have. And that's what we've been doing for the last few minutes. That again, to our north, the clusters of storms settling to the south and southeast. No current tornado warnings, but we do have severe thunderstorm warnings that stretch all the way up along the western side of Indiana. That's not far from West Lafayette, all the way down south of Terre Haute. So that's what we're going to have to track in our area. Thunderstorms continue in our area that are severe across parts of Scott, northern parts of Clark County. This includes western parts of Jefferson, a good chunk of Jennings, and southeast Jackson counties. So that's the warning that we have until 8:45. That said, all of this is along or behind the warm front. So this is the warm, unstable air mass that we have. And storms that have been riding along that throughout the day have been pushing down into parts of Cincinnati. That continues to move. And so these storms will be drifting off to the south and east. That's what we expect to happen through the overnight. They will eventually weaken, but we're still hours away from the weakening phase of this. That said, it's not like it's a wall of wind and we're just tracking that, right? And that's important because while we're going to have some severe weather scattered across the viewing area, this isn't a massive severe weather outbreak for us, despite the fact that Indiana and much of it was under that enhanced risk area for today. All right, let me bring up the timing of these storms. So I'll put on and the models have been running a little bit behind in time because the storms have been moving too fast. So by the time they initialize the model, it's a little bit behind. So here we are, 9 o'clock. This isn't going to be too far off because you can see it. It has it pretty much where it is now for 9. So we're 40 minutes off on that. If we scrub through this, you can see by 10 o'clock moving to our south and continuing to fade. That would be the best case scenario. And I think it's a realistic scenario. I think by the time we get past 11 o'clock in particular, and these storms are moving to our south, we really are running out of the energy. There are going to be other storms that develop, and determining where those develop still in question. Some of the latest high-resolution imagery wants to push it farther to the east. And you can see that from the HRRR model here. This is the high-resolution rapid refresh. That said, let's just go back to the radar, and I'm going to keep that up while we have our discussion, and I'll take some of your questions. So let's see. Bear with me. I'm just going to pull up the current radar. There it is. And that's a pretty good view. I'll zoom in. And in fact, I'm going to zoom into those pockets of wind just so I can keep an eye on those. I can see them in front of me too here, but let's see. And I'll zoom into those. So the strongest winds now passing Austin, approaching New Frankfurt, moving south of Kamensky near Paris. And if we were to query that, it's going to pop up the warning information. So let me pop the warning off real quick. And let's see if I can. So you can see that wind velocity at 55. I'm just going to put a couple on here. You're looking for those brighter pixels. That's where we would have the strongest wind, 49, 48. So all of that's just shy of severe limits. But again, we're only basing this on what the radar can see. It had much stronger wind earlier. In fact, the Weather Service upped that warning from what was 60 mile per hour winds to 70 potentially. So not a guarantee, but if those were able to mix down, that's what the radar was indicating. So from our newsroom, we're already seeing multiple trees down in Jackson County from across the area. So this storm, again, just to get your bearings straight here, find Seymour. And let's go back in time. I'm going to put on the radar. And I'm going to dial this back just a little bit. So you can see the Seymour area is Jackson County. And we've already had storm damage reported with trees down across parts of Jackson County. So there we are. This was at 6:30. Boom, boom, boom. Here come the storms right through the Seymour area. Freetown, skip past you. Medora, skip past you. But Seymour, Crothersville, you can see that push of wind moved in. And it did down trees and power lines. So dispatch reporting trees. And you can see, look at those winds right there. I mean, boom, Seymour. I'm going to zoom into that. That's the strong wind we were talking. It's weakened substantially, but you can see from Bobtown to Seymour. Let's put this into motion. This was just at the top of the hour. So this was less than 30 minutes ago. And that's how fast it's moving. So now we're in Chestnut Ridge, Uniontown, weakening as it moves south, but still producing wind over into Jennings County. So that's likely. I mean, if we were to draw where the wind damage occurred based on the radar, you can see where that would be. I mean, Bobtown, Seymour, right down toward Uniontown, right in that zone there. And watch as I put this into motion. Here comes the wind. Boom, boom, boom. And then it faded as it moved and translated over into Jennings County. But Jackson County took a hit. We have trees down across the county, power out in parts of Jackson County as well. All right. So that's important to note. Let's see if I can pull up any of our webcams from that zone. So bear with me just a second. I'm going to try to pop on a camera for you here. Okay, there's that. And let's see, I-65. I'll pull up one of the Trimark cams just to see farther to the north if we can see that wind shaking. Some of these cameras are going to be static. Others will be moving, but let's just see. All right, bear with me here. Let's see if we. All right, I'm popping on the Scottsburg. I'll make that a little bit bigger. Tough to see. Oh, now the image isn't available. That's not necessarily a good sign. Oh, let's see. We may have lost power there. Not sure why we lost the image, but I can tell you it's not there anymore. So we went from having an image to no image. And the winds are very close to that area. And we know the winds are picking up right over that region. Again, I'm trying to find the live feed if I can find anything with power here. There's one more chance for us here. All right, this is going to be, again, 65, Southern Indiana. Let's see. I don't think we want to go further north once we get. Well, let's take a look further north. Maybe if we can take a look at Seymour, I can at least see if they have power, right? That would be 1+. So let's see. There's Seymour. I'm looking at it here. I can show you what that looks like. This is Seymour. Tough to tell. Not much power to look at there. So let's try one more. This is going to be north of US 50. You can definitely see the roads are wet. The storm's gone by, but these aren't video feeds. These are just static images, which makes it really tough to tell as far as what the wind is doing. All right, let me go back. I want to recenter the radar here so we can see those strong winds, because that's important to watch. I mean, we already know. Here's the deal. I know. I'm looking at reports from the newsroom where we have trees down, power lines down, all right? And that's right now across Jackson County. No reports out of Jennings County just yet, but I suspect that's going to be changing, and probably even into parts of Jefferson. This is moving fast. You can see the largest push of wind is that bright area just south of Wakefield. I'll zoom into that. We're pretty much right along 256. Just off to the east of Blocher. So that's where we're watching strong wind, all right? And if we look at that, I'm just looking at a couple different velocities, that is where that strongest push of wind is. Outages from Jennings County. Let's see what they're saying here. Bear with me as I got a lot of data sources coming in here. It looks like about 120 out in Jennings. 29 out in Jackson, which seems a little low. I suspect that's running a little bit behind schedule. If we have trees and power lines down, we know we have power out, and it's probably going to be more than 29. So we'll let that catch up, but you get the idea. And I'll put the power outages on for you in a second. So that's the warning. That's the reason the severe thunderstorm warning is out. Powerful winds. You can see the pockets of that wind. So we're tracking that in real time. This is where we have the strongest wind. Outside of that, gusty winds, sure, 30, maybe 40 miles an hour. But the pocket of heavy wind is really where we're going to have the issues. And that's sitting just south of Wakefield, moving right across 256. That's going to come down to Indiana 56 as you work your way into the northern part of Jefferson County, Indiana. So much of Scott County, pretty much seeing this move just to your east. We do have some wind near Blocher, and will we see some wind as it rolls south toward Lexington, Indiana? Yes, but the greatest concentration of that is now across northwestern Jefferson County, Indiana, south of Wakefield, moving along 256 and approaching 56. So again, severe thunderstorm warning now being updated to 60 miles an hour. So they're seeing that decrease too from the Weather Service. And that's what you'll notice as we continue to track that. Washington County no longer in that warning. Again, we said it was mainly in Jefferson. They're still watching that little tail in Scott, but that's the zone. So when I put the updated information on, you'll notice the sort of decrease in that wind intensity. So the threat, which was labeled considerate, is gone, and the wind speed is now 60 instead of 70. So we've seen a sizable decrease in the velocity views. Good news. And that's what we were expecting. Okay. So that's, I mean, when I showed you what that looked like as it moved across parts of northeast Jackson County, right over Seymour, right down toward Crothersville, you could really see the intensity on that velocity. You saw those brighter colors, for the lack of better terminology. But that indicates where we had that pocket of heaviest wind. Now, the question is, will this be extended across the river? Can we expect Trimble County to be in on this? We already have part of Trimble in on it, but will this get extended even further to the south? And if these storms hold together, they'll likely extend that warning farther south, despite the fact that we have seen some weakening. It doesn't mean that the weakening will immediately drop off for all the storms pushing forward. But for now, we're certainly seeing better signatures on that velocity. So some good news there. All right, I'm going to keep an eye on this, but I did want to show some of the wild scenarios that unfolded across parts of Wisconsin today. I don't know if you are just now getting caught up on the day's news or if you've seen some of this today, but boy, they were hit hard earlier in the day. And we're talking about some pretty wicked storms that moved across Wisconsin down into Illinois, even parts of Michigan and northern Indiana. So that's an area where we have been seeing some very active weather today, and now it's pushing in our area. Same system, likely not producing the same punch of wind. All right. So let me pull this up for you. Let's see. So again, this is what it looked like with a darkening sky across Wisconsin. I mean, this was wild to see. And then we had the tornado debris that was left behind by these storms. This was, again, moving across parts of Wisconsin, moving through a good chunk of central Wisconsin, all the way down south of Green Bay. You can see what that darkening sky looked like. And with that, it was daytime, but these storms just darkened the sky. Look at the wind whipping there. This was impressive as it moved through. Jose Zazaya is in here with me. He's been keeping an eye on these storms throughout the day too, put together some of this video that we're seeing. But the damage up there, far greater than what we've been able to see as it's moved across Indiana.
Very much so, Kevin. And I'm just going to kind of click along with you. Off camera is totally fine. But some communities that particularly wanted to highlight based off of where our partners are up in Wisconsin, communities like Menasha and Appleton. So I think here we're mostly sitting in the Menasha community, and you saw what looks like a highway sign there just falling as the rain was just pelting those drivers.
Well, I know they declared an emergency there, and here's why. I mean, this was a tornado that was on the ground as you worked your way toward Menasha, and boy, it left a path of destruction that you can see from the drone video here.
Hundreds of homes.
Oh, wow. I mean, this was intense. It's been the strongest storm of the day that we've seen.
And you can already see, I saw like cranes, crews trying to sort of at least clear the roads, but you see even what looks like power poles or trees that are gone there. And some of these, Kevin, we can even listen to some of the folks. So there's a woman who our team in Menasha and Appleton, they were able to talk to her. She obviously heard the sirens go off. Let's listen to her kind of describe how they ran for cover.
And the sirens went off, and my daughter and I grabbed a cat, went in the basement, got really quiet, like our ears started to pop, almost like we're on an airplane or something. And it was intense. We heard a lot of loud noises, and we still had a cat upstairs. So I was a little worried about that. My daughter looked up and said, "Oh my goodness," and ran back downstairs because she could see the trees coming down.
So glad she's okay. They obviously had to evacuate and maybe wait for, calmer weather. Then you can try to assess just how bad the damage looks. But I don't think you can deny just how extensive that looks, Kevin.
No. And I mean, boy, when you're talking about a tornado like that, you really do have to get low, get underground if you can, obviously away from windows. This is Appleton, not too far away. But again, just shows the scope of the severe weather that we had throughout the day today off to our north. This is where it all started earlier this morning. And since then, it's been working to the south.
Now, to your point, where you kind of were explaining to us the sort of the path in theory, it was kind of making its way north to south. We were talking earlier about what it might be like for folks in Chicago as well. But here we can kind of just get more of a sense of what it looks like for folks in Wisconsin, a shredded warehouse, and no way to withstand what was coming their way. Let's listen to what this woman in Chicago was dealing with there. It was heavy rains, pretty bad stuff. Let's listen.
So as I'm driving, I came off the highway. I'm in the middle of the bridge right here, and all of a sudden the car started to stop. I don't know how he made it out, but the water just started rising all of a sudden, and there was no going back because there was a lot of cars behind me. They made it out. But this guy in front of me tried to make it out, and he got stuck. My car just started.
And I'm probably going to cut her off, but there's another part where if you want to click that, Kevin, she has more to say there. We'll just click that and then come back to the video.
I'm like, oh my God, the water just started raising
I
up.
was going to go help you. I saw you open the door and that's it.
Yeah, I said, no, I'm not going to
But
stand
you
there. I didn't know where the water's coming from. We can't see where the water's coming from. It just started rising up all of a sudden. I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah, wild to see. And I'll tell you, not only did we have the strong wind and rain there, it's the same system dipping to the south, Jose. And I happen to have some folks that were trying to get out of Chicago, and the airlines are a mess there. So it's a tough go if you're trying to have loved ones getting home from either of the Chicago airports.
Yeah.
Latest severe thunderstorm warning coming out here. Let me give you that because we knew we would have additional warnings. This one comes down right up against the metro. So, Jose, I'll thank you for that. I know you're making calls to see what damage we really have. Before you leave us, I know we gave an overview of Wisconsin and Illinois, but for us, you've been on the phone with dispatch out of Jackson and Jennings counties. We do have trees and power lines down, I know, from these winds. Any particularly hard hit areas? I know looking at the radar, it seemed Seymour and Crothersville would have been in line to see some of the strongest winds. What did they say?
They seem to corroborate that, Kevin. And as far as when I let you know about the multiple trees down, that seemed like that was their priority, their biggest concern to try to tackle and then eventually get to the power lines. But thankfully, nobody was hurt. But in line with what you were saying, for at least the folks in Jackson, Seymour looking like it's the core of where most of the damage is sitting now. Time is going to go on. I made a good phone call with the folks there at Jackson Dispatch. So I'm going to give them a call a little later to see what more they can update. And hey, at least the good news is nobody for the time being seems to have been seriously hurt. But you mentioned trees down, power lines out. I'm refreshing numbers too, looking at how things are going in Scott County even as well. But Jackson and Jennings is where we're kind of keeping most of our focus right now.
All right. Appreciate the help there. If you get new reports, bring them back to us. We'll pass them along as we get them. We're looking at the radar view, obviously. Here you see the warning that's out until 9:15. So this is the severe thunderstorm warning, 60-mile-per-hour winds. This includes parts of Clark, Henry, Oldham, and Trimble. So again, coming right down to northeast Jefferson County. This is because of the wind that we had across Scott County, as well as Jefferson County, Indiana. That is pushing closer to, obviously, Kentucky, but even to parts of the metro. That said, the damage reports outside of that core where we had the strongest wind, and just allow me to zoom in and we'll see where that is. Oftentimes what we're looking for on the reflectivity signatures, maybe where we have some of this bowing, that would be a point of concern. So let's take a look and see what the velocity looks like on that. Let me take the markings off there. Go. And then to the velocity we go. And you can see even at this point, some of the strongest wind still appears to be over parts of far western and southern parts of Jefferson County, not far from Chelsea, moving toward Nab and past that. All right. So again, general 40, 50, maybe an isolated 60-mile-per-hour wind gust seems to be somewhat normal through this zone. It's a fairly small area. It's where we do have the severe thunderstorm warnings that have been issued. And those will continue farther to the south. So they did extend that warning farther to the south. So now it includes parts of, as we pointed out, Clark County, Indiana, moving into Oldham, Henry counties, Kentucky, and parts of Trimble County. All right. So, and that comes all the way down to the Ohio River, just across the northern parts of northeast Jefferson County. So technically Jefferson's not in it, but it is very close. And I wouldn't be surprised to see if part of that clips us. We'll see how that expands out. Let me go back to the radar view. I'm going to zoom this out. There's the latest information on the warning. Again, 9:15 expiration time, Charlestown, LaGrange, Sellersburg, all in that warning. So that really is the only warning within the viewing area. I know some folks are just now jumping on the stream. We promised you through the evening newscast that we would be here as we went through the evening. So as long as there's severe thunderstorms, the live stream's where it's at. We've always maintained a 24/7 live stream. Comes with live updates frequently, especially when we're in our newscast. And anytime there's active weather, anytime preceding alert days, we're on giving more information. So it's important for you to know if you're a first-time visitor to Wave Weather Now, we've had this channel for years now. And it was Louisville's first 24/7 live stream. And we always maintain it. So there's always accurate, fresh, current weather information. You're not going to see anything recorded on it. It's all live all the time. And that's beneficial, especially when we're on in severe cases like this. So today is more about pockets of heavy wind. I feel like I've said that so many times this year, but it's been the case. This complex of storms pushing in our directions, riding along the edge of the heat that we had building out to the west. Today, that warm front's making its way through here. It was hot, but it was even more humid than not. And with that, we have the fuel for some of these storms to maintain themselves. As we get deeper into the night, it's harder and harder for them to intensify. So we've got a couple of things working against each other, but oftentimes we can see the kinematics overcome the dynamics. And with that, we're going to wind up seeing some strong pockets of wind still. We're increasing the low-level jet as we roll through the next several hours too. So that'll be a factor in what we're watching with these strong clusters of thunderstorms. Two of those appear on the radar that are concerning to us. One obviously over the northeastern part of the viewing area, and another one that sits just out to our west, moving right along the border of Illinois and Indiana, just south of Terre Haute, but far north of Evansville. I suspect, and there you see Scott County coming in with power outages at 94 right now. So we do have some power outages coming in from Scott County. These are why the warnings are out, folks. These are wind makers. So we'll track these storms back to our north that should move generally to the south and southeast. So likely to dive in this direction. So we'll watch those. If I scrub this back, you can see the movement. So pretty much a south movement on that with the whole general line that will be moving in the southeast direction. All right. That said, let's go back, take off the drawing tool. There we go. And let's go take a closer look at the storms moving closer to us. Jennings County is now up to 177 without power. And Jackson County stays up there as well. I'm going to zoom into the thunderstorms that we have ongoing. And I want to put the wind on there. I'm going to really walk you through that because it is that push of wind that we see. So if we're, again, go back all the way to where those storms move through, boom, Seymour, hard hit, Hayden, hard hit. See those pockets of wind? You can really pick it out. And right now we're looking at the same scenario. It's not as strong as it was when it was in the northeastern parts of Jackson County, but that's a very strong push of wind. So let's zoom in to that general area. Point out some towns. This is a good education of geography and some of the rural areas. South of Milton, a lot of folks know where Milton is. You can see that this is on the Kentucky side of the river from Trout over toward Monitor, approaching Bedford, Wise's Landing. That's all along the river. So that's a push of strong wind. We see strong winds south of Paynesville. This is now back over into Indiana, moving into the Otto area. And then New Washington possibly seeing strong wind. Again, that is the warning that we currently have. And you can see that warning comes all the way down past the Ohio River. This includes Henry County, Oldham County, a good chunk of Clark County, all the way down to Northeast Jefferson. So that is a severe thunderstorm warning that is in place. And if we were to put the lightning data on, you're going to see a tremendous amount of lightning with all of these storms. You see in the Wave app, Brian's pushing out the alerts saying, hey, strong storms approaching your area. If you're in that area, that was geo-targeted. So we sent that only to the people in the path of the storms. So we're not constantly interrupting people who are everywhere. We have tens of thousands of users. And on big weather days like this, the numbers skyrocket. So we don't want to be a pest or a burden. So we try to really limit the alerts unless you need them. And that's why we geo-target those to a certain geographical area to say, hey, if you're in this area and you've opened the app, then you're going to get the alert, all right? Jefferson County, Indiana has 123 customers without power. That storm's still tracking across Jefferson County, Indiana. You can see it's going to be making its way out of there shortly as it passes by Madison, moving past Saluda and over toward Trout. Strongest push of wind now would be approaching Bedford or just moving south of that along US 42, Oldham County next in line. But again, the strongest part of that wind is right along 42 in Trimble County, and that's where we'll continue to track the strongest part. New Washington likely seeing some gusty winds. Can't rule out a few isolated power outages, even if the winds aren't as strong. There are several reasons for that. One is we've had enough wind so far this year that there are some loose branches, and even a 40-mile-per-hour wind will either jog those loose or, create enough of a problem where we could see the strong winds down a weaker tree. That said, the strongest of the winds are now over Trimble County. So we're still tracking those storms moving through. Let's see. Bear with me while I look at some of the other reports that we have coming in. Not a ton of reports in terms of damage. It's mainly trees, power lines. Let me put up the power outage map for you here. So if I pull that up, you'll be able to see what we can see. There's a new warning coming out here. Let me go back to that just so we can get the warning out. That's the outage index. Here comes the radar for you. And the latest severe thunderstorm warning, again, is going to be that one that we had for Clark, Oldham, Trimble, and Henry. So they're just sort of refreshing that. When we look back along that Illinois border, there's now, again, this has been going back and forth with a tornado warning. Large hail's been along that boundary, but you can see that tornado warning obviously has the couplet with it, very close to the Oblong and Robinson areas, right over Robinson. You can see that Honey Creek. So that's the tornado warning, and the only tornado warning that we have currently. We look back across southern Indiana. If we were to look at warnings, that's the cluster of warnings along the Illinois border that we're watching closely. I mean, that gets close as it moves farther to the south, could get close to Patoka Lake, could get close to Jasper. So we'll watch that area too. But the one that we have in our viewing area is more linear, meaning that there's not quite the couplet for the tornado or the spin. But what we do have is a pretty nice line or wall of wind now sinking south of Bedford, moving across the Ohio River into northern Oldham County. And again, putting it into motion helps. So as we play this back, I'm just going to rewind it back, and then here it comes. Boom, boom, boom. And you can see its general movement. Sinking to the south with and southeast with a little bit more of a jog or a push to the south, all right? So the components of this is it all wants to move in this direction, but it has a little bit more of a southerly push. And you can see that in the loop. So if I push this back, watch, it wants to go off to the south and east, but the jog down pushes it a little bit more south than southeast, if that makes sense to you. But we do have that strong wind. Again, we've reported power outages all along this line. It's the reason that we still have severe thunderstorm warnings that are out for parts of Clark County, Indiana, and now continuing into Kentucky across the river. That would be Oldham County, Trimble, and Henry counties of Kentucky. And I can put that on for you so you can see that warning information. And that's Clark, Henry, Oldham, Trimble until 9:15. So we still have another 20 minutes left on that warning. Will that continue farther to the south and east? That would mean Franklin, maybe parts of Shelby, over toward Lexington, maybe next in line, but we're still a little bit ways away from that. Let's talk about the speed of this storm. This storm is moving off to the south, and with that jog to the east at about 35 miles an hour. So let's put on that a track for you. So if we were tracking this at 35 miles an hour, and I'm just going to track along that edge, and we brought that pretty much to the south with a slight jog to the east, these are some times for you. This would be Drennan Springs, 8:55, LaGrange, just before 9 o'clock, Eminence, 9:09, Chestnut Grove 914, Christiansburg 922, Shelbyville, if it stays intact, 926, and Frankfurt 936. So that should give you an idea of some of the timing that we're looking at with this. All right. Let me go back. Let's see. I'll grab another keyboard here. I'll pull up your comments on another screen so I can see those. All right, here we are. And bear with me just a second. This will allow us to take a few of your questions. Perfect. It's been not a year with a lack of severe weather, that's for sure. We've had our share. 17 tornado touchdowns, in fact, since the 1st of January. That's impressive in its own right. And let's hope we don't add to that tonight. I think the chance for that is slim. All right. Sorry, it just takes a second for me to get logged into all the computers, but here you are. I can see your comments now. There comes Jefferson County, Indiana, with over 1,000 customers without power. So it's about just over 5% of what we track across Jefferson County. And let's see if the map is populated here. Let me go back to the power outages. Here comes the outage map for you. This will be in and out fairly fast. This isn't going to be one of those all-night storm systems. It is moving fairly fast. Oops, I put up the wrong power. That's the index. Let me go back. Here comes the power outage. Give it a second. This is this graphic is intense to load because it has so much data in it. But you can see, and I'll just click on each individual's county. So Jackson County, 202 without power. That's slightly less than 1%. And then Jennings County, 129. Again, less than 1% of what we track. Scott County, 93. That's just over 1%. And then Jefferson County. That's been the hardest hit area. But that could be for a number of reasons. Population, what it hit, but 1,000 customers without power, Jefferson County, Indiana. And then over in Du Bois, they've got 1,700 without power there. So again, tracking some of these storms across the area. When you look at what the radar currently looks like, it is the wind. We've known all along that it would be a wind maker for us. Now well south of Indianapolis, tracking 2 clusters of storms, one with severe thunderstorm warnings for us in our viewing area. And you can see who that includes by looking at this latest warning. And this is, again, the severe thunderstorm warning you're seeing move across your screen. So Jefferson County, Indiana is now out of this. It did its damage there, and now it's continuing to move to the south. That's how fast they're moving. I mean, 35, 40 miles an hour. And this has the potential of those 60-mile-per-hour winds. When we look at the velocity, again, pointing out where we have the strongest pockets of wind, they are now moving into northern Oldham County near the town of Oldham, not far from Greenhaven, pushing toward Campbellsburg, Pendleton, moving over toward Delville. So Newcastle would be next in line. LaGrange would be next in line. Buckner could likely get clipped by seeing some of this. So again, that's the area that we're watching. We've got trees being reported down Clark County. This is State Road 62. So we're seeing some of those damage reports coming in. There you see it. Wavy's reading it to you too. So Indiana 62, that's not far from Westport Road in Indiana, not in Louisville. All right. Let's see. So when we look at what's going on across the entire area, you can see that, and bear with me while I pull up a wider view here. Just zoom it out. Want to keep an eye on what's happening out to the west too, with that cluster of storms getting closer to Du Bois County. Again, severe thunderstorm warnings there, along with one tornado warning near the Robinson area. This is 2 areas of wind, straight line winds in pockets, but we also see what's possible as a downburst. That's going to be a possibility. We can see that looking at the velocity data over parts of Clark County. So that too is concerning, just in the sense that it can also put down a burst of wind. This isn't going to be, everybody's not going to get wind damage out of this, but if you're in the line of one of those pockets of wind or where you have a downburst, it can happen fast and sometimes come with little warning. Obviously, we've got warnings out at this point, but we continue to still see wind damage being reported in each of these counties that this line has moved through. Jackson County, yes. Jennings County, yes. Scott County, Jefferson County, Clark County, now into Oldham and Trimble. Odds are we're going to start to see some power outages increase across those counties as well with this moving in. That said, it's pretty isolated. It's specific. It's not where we have massive trees down across the entire county. That has not been the case, but we do have trees down in places and certainly have power outages because of that. Clark, Henry, Oldham, Trimble, severe thunderstorm warning stays in place until 9:15. We've been on for just shy of an hour. We took you to the north where we had tornadoes, massive tornado touchdown across parts of Wisconsin earlier today. This same system's been drifting to the south throughout the day. It has picked up intensity and at times, mainly with wind, but there has been some hail. We saw upwards of near golf ball size hail out of this storm along the Indiana border. That was north and west of Indianapolis, but it was impressive to see. Most of the damage has been wind damage and some tornado damage. And obviously the tornado in Wisconsin took the headline because that was the most intense part of the day in terms of weather. For tonight, what we're watching now, there are going to be these clusters of storms that have the potential to produce strong winds. Within these pockets of winds, there will likely be some damage in places, not everywhere. We obviously have seen that. We're continuing to see that as it moves across the northeastern part of our viewing area. Oldham County would be one location that we're seeing that wind at this point. So let's zoom back in. LaGrange, we said you'd be next in line. It's coming in. Liro, L-I-R-O. I've been all across Oldham County, but I'm not sure I've been through there. So however you say it is where we're looking at for that. Dimpleytown, a little push of wind will be coming your way too. All right, let's go. I promised I would try to take some of your questions. So let me pull this up, see if we can do just that. Go back to the program where I can see the questions. And a lot of folks in here, so appreciate that. We'll do our best to answer as many of these as we can. All right. Strong winds in Newcastle, Brandon says. So we got Newcastle picking up. We'd expect that. Let's go. Let me zoom out on the radar because I'm in Oldham County, but I should point out that Newcastle is right in line too. While we may have slightly stronger winds approaching LaGrange, it is along that base where we would see the strongest winds. So you can kind of see Newcastle, Franklinton, over to LaGrange, even Goshen, probably seeing and feeling some of the wind pick up there. So that is the area. That is the push of wind. That is the wind change that the radar sees. And it's moving south, 35 miles an hour, in fact. So that's some strong winds moving through. Some folks asking about their particular location. Again, if the storms have passed you, they're over. Not everybody's going to get storms. We didn't have a 100% chance. It was a 60% chance for tonight. And let me show you why. Because when I zoom this out and I put the radar view on, there's a lot of places going to get skipped, not only by storms, but certainly by severe weather. Now, are there more storms behind this? Yeah. And the clusters that we see would be the one that's moving through, one, the one that we have across the Illinois border, and another one to the north. So that's what we're looking at. We've got a new severe thunderstorm warning that comes out just down into the Lexington area. So this clips Bourbon, Harrison, Nicholas, and Scott counties. So this is, again, And I'll zoom this out so you can better see it. Oh man, I think this thing's freezing up on me. Not a good time for that to happen. We'll give that a second. While we're doing that, I'll go back to some of your questions. Let me pull this mic over too, so we have both of them. All right, back to some of the questions. Let's see if this thing will. Sometimes these computers drive us nuts. All right, that one's crashed on me. Let me close that out. Can you believe that? Yes, I can. It always happens when you don't need it to happen. All right, bear with me a second here. Let me pop into this a different radar view so we can at least keep a radar up. That's the good news. We have multiple radar views. So we're going to go box 2. All right. Router 2. All right, bear with me 1 second here. Box 2, router 2. All right, let me pop that up while I restart this radar that I'm looking at. Close that program. Bear that. And then I'll be able to pop the enhanced risk area up too that I see Wavy has. So let me restart this. All right, back to some of your questions while that reboots up. Thunder and lightning in Spencer County. Appreciate that, Pam. Thank you. I'm not sure what Jake asked, but I see some folks answering. Pouring with very windy conditions in LaGrange. And there's the outage for Carroll County coming in with 57 customers. And the Weather Service chiming in. They see 50-knot winds just at about 800 feet above ground level. So they're concerned with damaging winds that could be reaching the ground out of that same storm that we were tracking. So that's going to be the one over toward Bourbon County. All right, let's jump back in. Radar's coming back up. We've got your comments coming. Any more storms tonight? Again, it's going to be impossible for us to answer. Pull the radar up and you can sort of dictate for yourself if you're in the clear. There are going to be some more scattered storms overnight, but these clusters of storms that we're tracking, remember there were 3 individual areas that we said would be the most concerning. Once those pass by, there's nothing more to worry about. Our alert day technically goes until 3 o'clock, but we're going to push this line past us. Here comes the radar back up. Brittany's saying Carrollton, no winds at the moment from where she is sitting. Lightning crazy in Crestwood, but no wind yet. Hope it doesn't get bad. Same. I hope it doesn't either. Lightning, Middletown, Eastwood. Yeah, boy, I tell you, the lightning and the radar's back up here. So let me swap that back over for you because I know you don't want to sit there and look at a tower cam. There's the radar. All right, it's loading still. That's 904 current image. You can see the warnings. So Franklin County clipped by that latest warning that's being issued. Let me pause the radar. And you can see that the Weather Service issuing a special weather statement for Franklin, Henry, Jefferson, Oldham, Scott, Shelby, 50-mile-per-hour winds. That's just below severe limits on that. But again, the core of that storm is already making its way through that area. So that's the severe thunderstorm warning that includes parts of Franklin until 9:45. So another 40 minutes on that warning. This warning still has another 10 minutes left on it. Let's look at the velocity. That's really the key of the night is the pockets of heavy wind with these storms. And we still have some decent wind passing Smithfield, moving toward Eminence, LaGrange, Dempleytown, Centerfield would be next in line on that. Oldham County chiming in. No reports in Oldham County yet. We appreciate that from the emergency management team there. So thank you very much. So special weather statements continues. That's good news. I mean, if we're already backing off on the wind in Oldham County, we've had no reports, that sort of spares Shelby County from the warning at this point. And we've noticed that diminishing trend. I mean, we were talking about that. The strongest on the reflectivity and the velocity would have been back up in parts of Jackson County, Jennings County, Scott County, and arguably with more power outages, maybe even into Jefferson County, Indiana, but that has weakened somewhat. So we continue to see that. Some areas that may be seeing lightning, a lot of you may be seeing it because it's obviously in the distance, but you can see the tremendous amount of lightning that we have with this cluster of storms. That's especially true over Trimble County, all of Henry County, Southern Carroll, a good chunk of Oldham County, northern Shelby. So all that lightning is nearby you, but even parts of Jefferson County can see that lightning in the distance. That's what some people refer to as heat lightning. Heat lightning, there's no such thing. It is lightning caused by thunderstorms, just oftentimes in the distance that occur in the summertime with those pop-up storms. This is a little bit different because these aren't just pop-up storms. This is a cluster of storms we've been tracking all day, but you get the idea. Sometimes with the heating of the day, we get these thunderstorms that just pop up here or there. And if you never get the storm, you're like, oh, well, there's lightning. It must be heat lightning. The heat causes that. Well, in an indirect way, it's a thunderstorm that the heat causes, but it is a thunderstorm. All right, let's jump back to the radar. I'm just going to go back and check. So you can see the tornado warning has gone off of this cluster of storms. Let's check the velocity. Yep, and you can see that it has weakened. It's still there. I mean, it's right there. So that's the area of rotation right over Port Jackson. We have to keep an eye on that. We can't let our guard down on that. It's away from the viewing area. So when I say we have to keep our eye on it, I just mean in the sense of meteorologically, we have to watch that. But it is well away from our viewing area. That's good news too. That said, we do have storms that move across the viewing area where we have some rain that's falling in southern Indiana. Repetitive rain could yield some flooding issues. But with that, the wind has been the biggest issue, and this has caused some power outages in a number of areas. So that severe thunderstorm warning, Clark, Henry, Oldham, Trimble, that goes until 9:15 could cause a problem. And you see Brian jumping in. Brian's putting on some information that says you're going to hear lots of thunder even outside of these storms. So that's exactly right. That's in the distance. You know, they're close enough, and there's a tremendous amount of lightning. You're probably going to hear some of that thunder. We've got now in Oldham County a transformer and utility pole on on fire on Front Street and Jefferson Street in Westport. So that report just now coming in from Oldham County Emergency Management. So first report from Oldham County with some issues there. Power is out in Newcastle. So we're getting some information there. A lot of folks talking about the lightning and the thunder. LaGrange seeing lightning and some wind. And again, we'd expect that the rain should really be picking up. Another transformer in the Ballard Vista Court in Ballardsville coming in from Oldham County. I can zoom into that for you just to give you an idea. We look at LaGrange. You'll first note as we work our way farther to the north, the rain easing just a bit near Oldham. You push down along the Ohio River, you go Skylight, Greenhaven. You're going to work your way farther to the south towards 71. You get toward Buckner. You work your way toward LaGrange, and you can get the idea that we have seen not only the wind push through, but now they're getting some of that heavy rain. Some of this pushes farther to the south as you work your way into the southern part past Centerfield, seeing some of that stronger wind approach. The rain will follow. So that's the area moving now into northern Shelby County and out of the Henry County area. I'm going to go back and put on the velocity here. So it's weakened enough. We may very well be out of severe thunderstorm warnings in our viewing area within the next 5 minutes. So that would be glorious. And then we can really jump into some of your questions and talk about some of the other things that are coming our way later in the week even. All right, back to some of your comments. Let's see if we can pop those up. There they go. Let's see. Nikki Meow says, are we primed for another storm, or did all the energy get eaten? Well, I don't think the energy necessarily got eaten. We've got thousands without power across southern Indiana right now. So they were in the enhanced risk area, Indiana, slight risk here. We still have the opportunity, even as we go into the night, to see thunderstorms that could be severe. That threat is not over just yet, but the greater threat all day long has been to our north. Power going in and out in imminence constantly. Ashley says that. Lots of lightning and starting to rain in Shelbyville, but no wind, according to Becca. Thank you. Harrison County, did they get under a warning? No warning for Harrison County. The only warning that we have in the viewing area is the one we're looking at on the screen. So we've got that there. I can even put on the expiration time. I'll pop the lightning on there too. I think it's important to keep the lightning on because that may be now the worst part of the storm. The wind's easing just a bit. Lots of lightning in London by St. Matthews. Linden, maybe? Yeah, wouldn't be surprised to hear the thunder and even see the lightning. Thunder and lightning in Shelbyville. Yeah, see, so it's getting close. I'll readjust because the bulk of the heavy wind and rain is moving out of the polygon. And I can show you that. This is the velocity, remember? Now this is the reflectivity. So we do have rain in Shelbyville, but the greatest wind sits to your north, near Raymond Hill. No warning for Shelbyville. That's important to note. And we're just about 3 minutes away, maybe 2 minutes away of seeing if this warning is allowed to expire. We've received some reports from the Eminence area of where we have power lines that were on fire. You see Brian's chiming into some of that in your comments here. Rain and a little lightning along the Shelby-Franklin County line. So we have that. Some folks talking about their birthday parties. Listen, you do what you got to do. If you have the bike helmet and you're worried, put it on, whatever. I remember being scared of storms as a kid, so I'd be doing that too, probably. Lots of thunder and lightning in the Frankfort area. That's according to Judy. Appreciate that, Judy. And we would expect that would be the case as these storms make their way. I don't have Franklin. I can zoom that out for you too. You can see in general, that lightning is getting closer to Franklin, but the core of the lightning is over Henry County. I mean, you've got a tremendous amount of lightning from Campbellsburg to Newcastle to Eminence, and even Oldham County, southern half of Oldham County lit up with a lot of lightning too. That's dangerous. You got to let these storms pass. I wouldn't be messing around outside. The SkyTrack camera even can see some of the lightning that we have ongoing. I've got it pointed to the south more than the east, but that's it's still showing some of that lightning, especially as we get later into the night where the sun is set. You'll be able to light the skies up. Power flickering on and off in Henry County, multiple downed trees, utility pole on fire on Jackson Road, and that's in Eminence. So that's from the emergency management there. We really appreciate the emergency managers. Boy, they've had a rough year too, but their information is so valuable to our viewers and all those who are watching all of our streams to stay safe. Let's see, back to some of your comments here. It was constant lightning when it came through Port Royal, according to Ethan. Don't doubt it. I mean, the lightning is rough. You can see that the warning has just expired. 9:15, warning's over. All right. So good news. That's moving past. The comments are coming up fast too. All right, there we go. Let me readjust the radar. The only warning that we have includes the northeastern part of Franklin County. This warning continues over toward Lexington. So you can see it barely clips our viewing area. It doesn't even include Frankfort, but Peaks Mill and Wood Lake are in that. By all intents and purposes, that probably is going to get revised as well. Let me go back to our radar view. And I'm going to zoom this out. And I'll turn that off just so it doesn't clutter the screen. All right. back to our radar, you can see the clusters of thunderstorms that we're watching. It's nice to see that gap. That's good news. Even farther to the north, while we have one warning, that's less than what we had farther to the north. Still may be dealing with some thunderstorms later tonight. As this, it really is a minute-by-minute gauge of how these storms will develop as they move farther to the south. But we're still going to have some heavy rain. We still have some boundaries. We still have plenty of moisture. We still haven't exhausted the atmosphere just yet. So while severe weather is still possible, the two main areas we were watching, this being one, this being another, are maintaining their strength, but in some ways have weakened. And that's good news. When I say maintaining their strength, I mean they're still severe at this point, but they have weakened somewhat. And that's good news. This is just general rain that we have across parts of our viewing area in Indiana. So nothing severe in that. Lightning, I can turn that on for you because we've been talking a lot about that. Obviously, the two clusters of storms hold the greatest potential, but that's the area we're looking at, would be those two areas for not only wind, but lightning, and in some cases, maybe even some very small hail. They'll be coming out a new warning for Shelby and Franklin counties. And why is that? Because the mesonet just gusted to 61 miles an hour in Shelbyville. So let me show you that latest warning. I'll show you the winds first. You're going to see the wind gust pop on. It's not there yet, but I'll show you that warning in a second, or I'll show you the wind gust in a second. But the mesonet in Shelbyville did just gust. So now we have the warning for Anderson, Franklin, Shelby, and Spencer. 61 mile per hour winds. That's just above the threshold for severe. And I'll pause that. And let me take the satellite off. And you can see some of the IMPING reports coming in. These are reports from you. We appreciate those. The 1-inch tree limbs are broken over in LaGrange. So that gap that's moving through Indiana is really going to be a benefit to a good chunk of southern Indiana and the Louisville area. Where we are seeing the strongest wind is in the same area we have been, and that's right along the apex of sort of that Bode segment that's moving across parts of Shelby County, approaching Shelbyville. We had 61 mile per hour winds there, and we'll continue to track that off to the south and southeast. And as that moves toward southern parts of Shelby County, eventually into Anderson County, it very well could clip far eastern parts of Spencer County. And that's the reason that warning is drawn like it is. I keep saying that not only do we have to be concerned with the wind, but that lightning is moving in your direction too. So if you're watching from, say, Shelby or Spencer or Anderson or Franklin, it's a lightning wind maker moving in, followed by some heavy rain. So we did measure 61 mile per hour winds. We have had trees down in a number of places, really, all the way from Seymour to Crothersville, over toward North Vernon, and then pushing south, parts of Scott County, Jefferson County, Indiana, moving into Clark County, Oldham County, Henry County, Carroll County, Trimble County, now into northern Shelby, Franklin, and eventually Spencer. So those are areas that we've been watching. All have been severe thunderstorm warnings. This latest warning that's out, I'll put the information back up on it for you so you can see it. Severe thunderstorm until 10 p.m. So another 40 minutes on that. This storm is moving again, mainly to the south and southeast. That movement is still at 40 miles an hour. All right. So that makes it 40 mile per hour. 60 mile per hour winds possible. We've recorded 61. And that was right at Shelbyville. So that's where we have that. The wind gust was 61. I'm just looking at a couple of things here. No other new power outages. Let me go to that map one more time just to see if the map has captured any. And we'll pop those up. You're going to be able to see, again, parts of Trimble and Henry County with the most percentage. So almost 22% of the customers we track without power in Trimble County, and then Henry County. also reporting about 21%. That's 930 customers. There are thousands more, in fact, 1,100 in Jefferson County. And then let's check. We're still at 284 in Jackson County. Now, keep in mind that when we're talking about the imagery coming in from the velocity in the northern and northeastern part of Jackson County, as we go further away from the radar, and we've got the radar both in Indianapolis that we use and the one in Fort Knox that we use. But as we go further out in distance, the higher the beam goes. The higher the beam goes, we are going to run into stronger winds, right? So, that's not to say that the winds weren't all that strong, but with those few power outages going through one of the most populated areas in southern Indiana, it begs the question that maybe we were shooting a little high and those winds weren't actually at the ground. Even though we had a few trees down, could have been much worse if we'd have brought that whole pocket of wind down. So maybe that didn't happen. And that's good news. Just wanted to explain sometimes reading the radar has to be taken with where that imagery is versus where the radar is. It all matters. Let's go back to the radar view. Severe thunderstorm warnings still farther to the north. So we've got that one not too far from Lafayette. That's over the Logan area, Petersburg, north of Kingsman, well away from us. Coming back down, you see parts of Martinsville, Bloomington, some heavier rain there. Let me put it into motion. You'll see the movement of this is going to bring it into Bloomington. So some heavy rain, but not severe. That moves in. We'll grab the radar and bring it on down. You can see some of that rain moving into parts of Jackson, Lawrence counties. Going to see more rain move in. That's why flooding, we can't rule that out. Severe thunderstorm warnings over near Vincennes. Again, maintain severe. Let's look at the velocity. We still have that one couplet that we've been watching, and that's just north of Bridgeport. So a pocket of heavier wind there. So that will be an area that we watch move toward the Lawrence area. Not far from Vincennes. Once again, pointing out that that's still a ways away from our viewing area, but we'll be approaching places that we know, like Patoka Lake, possibly moving closer to the Jasper, Indiana area with time, because this whole area will sink to the south and east. So we're going to bring this all down into the south and east, okay? Back on a wider view. And we can take a look. There you see Henry County coming in with those power outages we mentioned. The thunderstorms that we have moving across our area, bowing out just a bit, and you'll notice that across Shelby and Franklin counties. That would be a push of wind, may even extend back into far northeast Jefferson County. Let's look at the velocity on that. Can't rule it out anywhere along that boundary that we see the wind. And there's another one from Trimble. You can see that's 22 as well. So we were just going over some of those numbers, but Wavy's catching up with those too. And with this, wind gust anywhere along this boundary would be problematic. 40 to 60 miles an hour, can't rule it out. Again, the airport wind gust, not too impressive at this point, but we obviously can see that lightning in the distance. So if you're anywhere in eastern Jefferson County, you're seeing that lightning. The bulk of it's in southern Oldham and then over into northern Shelby. A lot of lightning. Let's see. In fact, I'll see if I can show you some of that lightning. Give me just a second here. I'm going to try to pop on one of our SkyTrack cameras. Let's see. We have so many cameras between all the TriMark cameras and the NDOT cameras. I can see. All right, here we go. Let's see. Video feed, Simpsonville. All right, give it a second to load here. Newcastle, you can see multiple trees down there. There you see the lightning. This is coming to the from the outlet shops of the Bluegrass. So this is Simpsonville, and you can see some of the lightning there. I'll recenter that up. I'm looking to see if the camera's swaying at all. Sometimes you can tell how much wind we have by seeing the camera move. Of course, this is decent lightning. It is a lot of lightning. Again, we're looking at Simpsonville, so that's if I can move this out of the way. You see Simpsonville. Some of the sort of more lightning is just now moving toward that camera, so we should see this tick up in intensity as we get a little closer. So we have that. In Louisville, we're dry. I'll come back to that later. I've got it saved, so I'll be able to get to it a little easier. Lots of lightning, but in terms of rainfall, outside of the extreme eastern part of Jefferson County, all of Jefferson County remains dry. I'm going to zoom this out, and let me put it into motion. This is the last 3 hours. And you can see sort of how they're falling apart. And this is good news. I mean, even the strongest of the storms falling apart. And that's excellent news because it's moving into a very much an environment that's still moisture laden. It still has decent instability. So the fact that we're not translating those winds to the ground is a real big plus. Now, we still have plenty of rain to go, and flooding could be a bigger issue for some. But if we can skip the wind part, that would be great. And we're already getting past part of that because this was the main issue initially. This was the second. Remember, so we've been talking about these clusters of storms. We are still building some clusters of storms back to the north, but again, later in time, it becomes harder and harder for those to have the fuel needed to maintain severe probabilities. Now, they've reissued the tornado warning. This has been going back and forth all night on this storm here. Remember, we pointed that out a minute ago, too, when we zoomed into it. I'll pause the radar and zoom back in. You're going to notice that couplet. When they issued the severe thunderstorm warning, they issued it with a tornado possible tag. You can see that. And now they've gone ahead and issued that as a tornado warning. And you can even see the hook on the reflectivity. More important, the velocity shows that couplet. So this general area here would be right where we're watching that storm, near Lawrence, moving down toward Billet, just to the west of Vincennes. So we're right along the Indiana border on that storm itself. You're sort of getting it for those just tuning in. It's 9:30. We've been at it since about 8:10, 8:05, and we were on all evening during our newscast talking about these clusters of storms we would be tracking. We knew there was a chance of severe weather today. Most of that had the opportunity to be in Indiana with the enhanced risk area. And let me show you the latest update on that. Since we're talking about it, might as well show it. And you can see that as they expanded that, they brought it right down across southern Indiana. So that's the zone of the best potential for severe weather. All right. So that's where we're at with severe weather moving through. That means the storm's farther to the north. Again, the energy is farther south, closer to the Ohio River, southern Indiana. So we're in that 3 out of 5 at this point. But the good news is when you check the radar and you check the velocity, this would need to be the zone. I mean, this is it. Once we see this collapse, and that lines up fairly well with where we have the strongest storms, we're sort of getting gapped across the Louisville area with just some rain. That's wonderful. We'll watch this to see if we see any of these storms intensify. But at this point, it really is a 2-cluster show. It's a cluster. This first cluster is moving out of our viewing area. That's the good news. That's the one over toward Lexington and Paris. So that one's out. This one is likely going to stay just out to our west. And with that, we're right in the middle. We'll see if these can develop any, but that would become harder and harder to do. Let's see. We've got a new discussion coming out, so let me pull that up for you. The Storm Prediction Center issues the mesoscale discussions. And then we'll see if we have, again, that potential for rotation existing in this storm near Vincennes. And if we put the velocity on, you can see that pretty clearly. We'll zoom that in. That's one area, and that's right along US 50 near Lawrence. And then if we were to scroll back over in the severe thunderstorm warnings that we have here, again, what we would look for would be the potential for some broader rotation in the Peaks Mill area, perhaps. Nothing too overly defined on that scan of the radar. But you can see where we would have that inflow. All right, let's take a look. And let me go back. Wanted to put the times back on this, so bear with me, and then I'm going to show you the mesoscale discussion. Takes a minute for that to populate. Though that warning's until 10 o'clock. We've got a structure on fire in Mount Eden. This is in Anderson County. So that was electrical, and the house is catching on fire. So again, keeping an eye on that part as we continue to, let me put that in motion. Bear with me to just take that off. Boom. And I'll just take that off to sort of declutter the screen for us. Let's put this into motion. It's good to be able to see the velocity. It's even better in situations like this to roll it forward. And I can do that by just scrubbing this back. So 3 hours ago, there were no storms even in the viewing area. We brought the storms into Jackson County, boom, brought them down through Scott, Jefferson, moved into Oldham, Henry, even parts of Trimble County. And then you can see that moving past. Notice on the last frame, the bowing out here in Franklin. This is trying to develop an area of somewhat broader rotation. We looked at that, and you can see some trees being reported down now in Frankfort, 1 inch in diameter. But this is showing some signs of that broader rotation. Perhaps this would be a little mesoscale vortex that's trying to develop along that line. The good news is it's just about out of the viewing area, but Franklin County would be seeing that. Now let's see if the velocity corroborates that, and it does. You can see this area here, but again, here's Franklin County, so it's just about out of there. So places like Versailles will need to be on standby, moving maybe just south of Lexington. So it may even include parts of Lexington. So that'll be an area to watch. We'll see how this plays out over the course of the next few minutes, but that is definitely an area to keep an eye on. That's one in the main area, and mainly moving out of the viewing area. See some of the power outages coming in. Henry County with 36%, 1,600 customers without power. Henry County. So again, pretty big deal when we're talking about these thunderstorms moving through with the strong wind potential. That's what we've had. I'm going to go back and put the radar back on, the reflectivity. I'm going to zoom this back out. I'm going to turn off that box so it's not in the way. We've got new outages in Oldham County, 212. Not too bad there in comparison. All right, that's going to be good. Let me take off the warning. I'll take that off, and let me scrub this back. We were talking about 6:30, 7:30, storms start to move in. Boom, there they go through Seymour, Crothersville, North Vernon, moving just near Austin, Indiana, moving across western Jefferson County, eastern parts of Clark County, Trimble County, Kentucky, Oldham. There was in Henry, and now it's making its way into Shelby, past that, moving through Franklin, and then making its way farther to the south as it continues to bow out just a bit. So these storms are just about out of the viewing area. Put this into motion. The big question mark will be, will the next warning clip any of our viewing area, like parts of Northeast Nelson or Washington counties? And it really is all about this part of the storm. It would need to sink pretty much due south for that to happen. And it's got a slightly southeastward component to it. So it could keep it right along the border. I think Washington County may have the best shot of seeing something, but it would be the extreme northeastern part of Washington County. Outside of that, I think we're in better shape than where we'll be further to the east. So, but northeast Nelson, Washington, eastern Marion, that's a zone to watch. Outside of that, at this point, the rest of the viewing area is in decent shape and should be for a while. The other part will be these storms over across the Illinois-Indiana border, but those, I mean, if they clip any of our area, it's not going to be until late, and that may be across western Grayson County. So all in all, I think we have two things to really watch. One will be that area I mentioned. I'll zoom in, make it a little bit easier to see. I think that's going to be this area that is northeast Nelson, eastern Washington, and far eastern parts of Marion. I think that is a zone to watch. And I think watching these storms to the north, even though I really think that the threat for those would be low for them to really intensify, mainly because we've had a decent amount of wind, a decent amount of rain already over that area, and we've cooled the temperature somewhat. There is still a chance as the winds increase that we could see some of these thunderstorms grow tall enough that we could see some wind brought down to the surface. So that's an area that we'll watch over the course of the next few scans of the radar. All right, so that'll be one area in addition to that one off to our south and east. Outside of that, I think that the bulk of this goes in that direction, which will be some good news too. So all in all, we're in better shape than we could have been with this had the whole line moved through with those very powerful winds. I mean, you get 70-mile-an-hour winds, which probably has happened in some of these locales. You get that into populated areas like southern Clark County, Floyd County, Jefferson, Bullitt, where we have a lot of population, and that's a quick, tens of thousands without power pretty quickly. So bad enough for the folks that are enduring it, but it missed the bulk of the population. All right, let me take off that line. I'll leave the radar up, and then we'll come back and take a closer look. I'm going to go back to some of your comments here. And Brittany's saying lots of lightning and wind in Frankfort. We see that on the radar too. No power outages. Yeah, so Stacy is saying no power outages in Ballardsville. Good news there. Power is out in Eminence. I live on the east side of Frankfort off Georgetown Road. The winds, thunder, rain have picked up in the past 10 minutes. Susan, thank you. I'm just scrolling through some of your reports here. It's thundering with some lightning in Cox's Creek, so that's northeast Nelson County. New severe thunderstorm warning. So there you see it. You heard it here first, folks. So this is going to include the very, very, they did not include northeast Nelson in our viewing area, but they did include far, far eastern parts of Washington County. And then that goes over toward Lexington as we expected. So that's that push of wind coming out. This should not last long in the viewing area. That will go until 10:30 tonight. Let's get another power outage check. I'll pop up some of those power outages. Here they come. They've made some improvement, it looks like. Still 22%, 788 in Trimble. And then we go down into Henry. 1,600 power outages, customers without power in Henry County. None in Jefferson. Oldham coming in with 212 still, so no movement there. What about Shelby? 173. Not too bad. Franklin. I have a feeling we're going to see Franklin and Shelby go up. Those storms are just now coming through that area, so we'll continue to track those through that time. And then let's see if they're making any improvements. 284, still less than 1%. That's Jackson and Jennings. What about Scott and Jefferson? Scott, 202, 2%. And Jefferson, still sizable at 1169. That's almost 6% of the Group reporting. All right, so power outages. That's a quick check of those. Back to the radar. Some of the warnings coming out are fairly large, indicated by the weather or acknowledged by the Weather Service, just to say that they're covering a broad area with the forward speed of these. Weather station in Franklin just gusting to 57 miles per hour. So it's not far from Frankfurt, 57 mile per hour winds there. So that warning expires in 4 minutes. So that top one, and then that translates to the one that clips the far eastern parts of Washington. Then you get over into places like Harrodsburg and Nicholasville and Danville. So it's Boyle and Anderson counties. We do have power lines down on Forest Drive in Lawrenceburg. So you can see that that storm is moving through Lawrenceburg now. It was that area of wind we're talking about, this zone right here where we saw, if I put the velocity on, you're going to be able to see that boundary. That's where we have the strong wind push. So next in line would be Salvisa, moving south, Nicholasville, maybe Harrodsburg, Johnsonville. Taylorsville may see some wind, but by that point it should be weakening somewhat back to the west. Same story up through Georgetown. So the strongest push of wind would be this zone here. And that moves here. And if we continue to track that here, let me in fact just put a track on that for you, because that storm is moving, I believe, at 45. I'll go back to the warning, and that is indeed moving at 60 miles an hour. So it's sped up in its forward motion. So let me readjust the timing of that, and then we'll put this track on it. So I'll make that 60 mile per hour wind in its forward speed. All right, 60 miles per hour. All right, let's track that. I'm just going to track the general wind right along that leading edge. Boom. And this is moving pretty much to the south with a slight jog. So we'll give it to that. These are some of the times. Versailles, 9:45. Bonita, Bohan, 9:46, 9:51. Harrodsburg, coming in at 9:59, as well as Nicholasville. Bryantsville, 10:02. Danville, 10:06, and then Lancaster coming in at 10:10. So that's an area that takes it down into Boyle County by that point. This will move it south of Lexington. You can see Nicholasville, Bryantsville, even over toward Richmond. So within the next, 30 minutes? It's moving pretty fast. So should be making its way through in a hurry. I'll put the radar back on a second. We're waiting for that one warning to expire. That's that northernmost one. That expires coming up at 10 o'clock. And then you can see the one just below that at 10:30. So those are the warnings that we have in our viewing area. And then, of course, the one over near Franklin, that's that one at 9:45. So that's Bourbon, Harrison, Nicholas, and Scott. It also includes parts of Franklin, which is why it's showing up. So 3 warnings in that cluster. And we'll continue to see that again pass through. When we scan the radar around, we're looking to see where we have not only the current storms ongoing, but where additional storm development will occur. So as we're looking at the velocity in this, and we can point out where we have some of the stronger winds now, we can also check that reflectivity and see that the storms, while we didn't have much going on in Jefferson County, we do have a few thunderstorms now, and those do contain lightning. The bulk of the lightning is in Shelby County, but we do have some lightning bolts coming from Middletown over toward Prospect. So some of those thunderstorms trying to build back along that boundary into eastern Jefferson County. Will that trend continue? There's no reason to think it won't continue to build in this general area because it's been untapped so far today. With that, these storms don't have the strongest wind. That's out ahead of it. We'll see how that develops. But the good news is that cluster is moving past. And what we need is for that to get more and more displaced. That'll take, at least that energy with it. I'm going to go back zoom out, we still have the one tornado warning, and then farther to the north, just north of Terre Haute, that one thunderstorm warning. So those are the clusters of warnings that we have. The watch is in place in general where we had the enhanced risk redrawn, and that would include parts of the area. That is in place until 2 a.m. All right. If we were to look at any mesoscale discussions that we have, let's see if we have any of the new ones. Just bear with me a second. We'll unlock that. There we go. And refresh it. And it's the same general area where we had again, the watch that was issued early on. And since then, no real advances in terms of the discussions coming out. So I'll just check one more time. Let me hit refresh to see if we can see any of the new ones, or if there are any new ones. Let me take that radar off. All right. And that's way out west, so that's not one that's concerning to us. I'm just thumbing through some of the mesoscale discussions that we had at 9:30. This one came out, and that will be, let me mark on this for you. I'll zoom into it. There's that red shaded area that covers Louisville and parts of southern Indiana. Severe weather threat continues. Damaging wind gusts. A few damaging wind gusts may still occur with the stronger storms before nocturnal cooling begins to limit severe weather. And that's what we were talking about earlier. Once we get deeper into the night, as the sun sets, we have to really crank up more and more energy. One way to do that is with the low-level jet. So that will help in some ways, but we're losing a lot of the instability. We're obviously losing some of the fuel because we're raining some of the moisture out. So this was a loosely organized MCS with a history of producing damaging gust. That was the one that we were tracking just off to our east. Again, it's going to be scattered over the next hour or two. And that's the area from that's outlined in red. That's what they're saying from the Storm Prediction Center, which is what we've been saying through the evening hours here. It's a limited threat. That's great news. And then back to our home view here. I'll center that up. But we still have some wind. I mean, we can't ignore the fact that we have had thousands with their power knocked out. And that continues. And you can see some of those stronger winds now pushing into this new warning that we have. And that continues to make its way into northern parts of southern Anderson, northern parts of Boyle County. Will we see some of that strong wind in Willisburg or Mackville? It's possible, but most of it looks to be right along the border on toward Harrodsburg to me. Little pocket of heavier wind not far from Southville. And just allow me to scan over even outside of our viewing area, Lawrenceburg, Versailles, all seeing some strong wind with that, and even into the Lexington area. But for the most part, in Louisville, we're dodging a pretty good amount of the wind, at least for now. And I think that's going to be the case. Remember, I said earlier we'd watch these to see how they would develop. They're developing, but they're having a really tough time. So it's not like it's congealing together and blasting in here. What happens with these MCSs is they develop and then they just race south and they produce a tremendous amount of wind. And that's problematic. We saw it earlier today. And as the day's gone on, that sometimes happens. They get torn apart, split apart. It's not all that organized as it was, but it can still cause problems. And that's sort of the scenario that we've been in, where we have had problems, but nothing like what areas to our north saw earlier, and especially when we had the tornadoes on the ground in Wisconsin. That was problematic. Evansville's asking the Weather Service if they're going to continue with this tornado warning up near Lawrence. And you can see that warning is in place until 9:15 Central Time. Let's see what the couplet looks like. Yeah, it's still there, but it's a little broader than it was, and that's right over Billet. So you can kind of see where that rotation is. All right, let's go back. I'm going to just check a couple of things here. Number of power outages continues to go up in places in our viewing area, and that's expected because as we take a look, we still have that wind, and that push of wind still skipping past part of the area, including Shelby and Spencer counties, and then eventually moving down into far eastern parts. Now, I'm not sure how affected Washington County will be out of this. Let's hope not, but it's right on the edge of where we see that strongest wind push. Most of it should be over toward the Harrodsburg area, and that's what we've mentioned a few times before. Just outside of our viewing area over towards Scott County, if you're familiar with the Toyota plant there, we're looking at 1,800 without power there. I'm just looking at some of the reports coming into the Weather Service office. Nothing new. Again, that's a good sign too, because when we have real active weather, the new information keeps coming even hours later, because sometimes it takes a while, especially once the sun sets, to get the reports in. So by all intents and purposes, this is good news. We're coming up on 10 o'clock. We've got warnings that will continue for part of the viewing area. I mean, it's arguable that maybe Washington County won't see much out of this. Lawrenceburg, Versailles, down toward Harrodsburg, probably taking the brunt of this, even toward Nicholasville. But it's in the warning, and with some wind moving into the far eastern parts of Washington County, that warning will stay in place until 10:30. So we still have another 40 minutes left on that warning as it moves south. Weather Service giving plenty of time. And you can see Shelby County ticking up with some power outages, up to 581. All right, back to some of your comments. Let's see if we can get some of those in. Trying to pull some of those up here. Jay says, what a letdown for the Metro. Yeah, I don't know if it's a letdown, right? Yeah, and Crispy Brisket saying the enhanced just doesn't make sense unless they're expecting redevelopment. Well, they issued that before it fell apart. So in their defense, they saw that cluster, which was sort of a little disorganized anyway. I mean, it was a little broader, but they didn't know if that was going to sort of fan out and still produce wind damage down into the area. So they broad brushed both of those together. I see their thinking on it. I'm not here to second guess what the Storm Prediction Center or the Weather Service does. I think they do a great job, and we all have to work together, and weather is a humbling business. And if you think you're right all the time, yeah, keep saying that and you'll soon find that you're not. Yeah, I mean, is it overdone at this point? Probably yes, but it's what they have out. At this point, we're dealing with the warnings anyway, and it's one of those deals where I'm not sure it really matters. You can see some information coming in. Thunderstorm wind gust that was reported at 61 miles per hour. That was the personal weather station out of Frankfurt. So that's what we have there. Scrolling back up just to see some of your reports. Actually saying, thanks for talking about that tornado warning to the west. Yeah, we talk about that, but really those straight line winds and pockets of wind can cause more problems. And we still see that. I mean, that just south of Frankfurt, pretty good push of wind moving through Lawrenceburg right now over toward Versailles. The thunderstorm warning continues, and you're seeing that information come across for Anderson. It's that same general area that we're looking at where we have the severe thunderstorm warning that's in place. If I put those times on here for you, you'll see the expiration for both of them. The 10:30 one is the southernmost one, and then the one where the storm's moving out of will expire in about the next 6 minutes. So it's moving fairly fast, about 50, 60 miles per hour on that warning. I'll take that back off for now. We'll put it on if we need it. Let's go back to the radar view. And you can see, again, if we put it into motion, that's more helpful than not. And we're having a real hard time to see any development here. So that's good news. And this development will continue. So this is really now the show, and has been, and that will move out of our area. I mean, it's almost out of there now. Far west or far eastern parts of Washington County, technically in the warning, but also technically still could see some wind. So we'll watch that make its way past, and then that will make its way all the way down toward London. So this part of the storm will likely not stop anytime soon. That's going to be diving off to the south and east. That makes its movement with some wind damage that could be extending in that zone there. If we were to look at what damage we've had so far, let me pop that on. These are some of our storm reports, and I'll zoom in. In our viewing area, let me just pop some of these on, and I'll put the information on. So here's Henry County. This is going to be in Newcastle. Multiple trees down, utility pole on fire. That was the Jackson Road near Eminence. And again, that time was estimated at right before 9 o'clock. That's when the radar had it. All right, let's go Shelby County. This would be not far from Eminence, too. So Shelby County, Mesonet, this was the 61-mile-per-hour wind. So that was also in relation to wind damage, right? And then to Clark County, Indiana, we had that not far from Solon. This was trees down along Indiana State Road 62. That was at 8:44. So we're tracking that to the south. And then those are the reports that we've had. There's one in Frankfurt. Let's take a look at that one. That's going to be that 61-mile-per-hour wind, too. So 61 mile per hour on the wind, that seems to be what we've had for the most part as our highest gust, okay? The damage reports have been coming in, mainly in the form of trees, some power lines down. I'm going to put the radar back on. And let's go back to the warning that we're tracking. 3 more minutes left on the northernmost part of that. You can see the strongest wind would be approaching Harrodsburg. And you can see that moving in. Even moving out of that Lawrenceburg, Furmantown over toward Lexington. So a push of wind in that general zone right through there. You can see that making its way Nicholasville. So Lexington next in line, Nicholasville, Harrodsburg. Those are some of the larger places that would be feeling the effects of this next. Out of our viewing area, by the way, all of those places are in the Lexington area. And then still maintaining the tornado warning over here. Let's just check it again. Seems to be easing a bit in terms of that couplet that we saw. So that's some good news too. And in fact, wouldn't be surprised to see if all of that just fades away. The warning and all. Both warnings. It really has weakened. Still seeing some pockets of wind, but nothing too outrageous. So we'll see how they do. Getting closer and closer to the radar there. Just sits north of Evansville. Back to the radar. And now let's put this into motion. Let me take that box off. And here comes the motion. Yeah, so I think we're squashing, and there's a traffic issue. Gilland Road, that's 64 East. We're squashing this for the most part, may maintain an isolated severe chance as it sinks a little farther south, but that would be a slim chance. Even though we're seeing some development in eastern Jefferson County, that holds a very slim chance of seeing severe weather develop out of that. Getting some rain, yes. In fact, when we look at some of the MSD rain gauges, you can see we've had over 1/4 inch of rain in Middletown. And less than that across the rest of Jefferson County. Higher totals up in, say, Crestwood, where we've seen over 1/2 inch of rain, not far from the Crestwood area. So the radar still showing some rain coming in now over eastern Jefferson County, stretching from Anchorage down to Middletown, moving through Shelbyville Road, and then all the way down toward Fisherville. But that, again, not severe. Another rain shower across western parts of Shelby County. We start to get into the more robust wind as we work our way farther to the south. Remember that we still have technically eastern parts of Washington County under that warning. That's where we see Willisburg. Can you see it there? Mackville. That's in Washington County, Kentucky. So we technically still have that part right there in the warning in our viewing area. But in actuality, while we may see some wind, the greatest wind threat looks to be farther displaced to the east. But nonetheless, that's the warning, and that's in place until 10:30. So another 29 minutes on that warning itself. Let's check some power outages. And then I'll put up some of the MPING reports too. And Brian's chiming in as well. You can see some of his comments. Notice the Franklin County alerts coming in, 800 customers without power. Shelby County starting to report outages at 641 customers without power. Henry County coming in at 1641 without power. And let's go up into Trimble County, 794 without power. So again, all of that cluster, that one little MCV pushing down through there with strong winds, downing trees and power lines from Seymour to North Vernon, from Austin to Deputy, Indiana, to Madison, moving across the river. Haven't got any from Clark yet. 42, so not bad. We did have part of that storm go through northern Clark. And then that went right down into Oldham, Henry, Shelby, Franklin, and I suspect we won't have many from Spencer, Nelson, or Washington. So I think the show is pretty much done. I think we had that area sort of pegged where we were looking at that going through, and then we'll continue to watch that stream to the south. So that'll be the next zone that sees the strong winds. And we can see that on the radar. I mean, it's not a guess. I'll put the radar back up for you. And there you can see it in its motion over the last 3 hours. So are we finished with the storms? No, we probably have a few more storms to contend with, even more to our north. Are we finished with severe weather? Well, it's getting closer. We're not there just yet, but we're close. And that trend will continue to ease. So for every hour that goes by from this point, the threat of severe weather goes down. The flooding, haven't even had any flood issues at this point. Everything's moving at a pretty good clip, and there's nothing extremely heavy coming in behind what was most heavy to begin with. So I think we're going to be in decent shape there. So all in all, the wind maker scooting just to the east of our viewing area will continue making its southeastward trek. And, you know, I think we're going to be in good shape. So I'll hang with you until this warning expires. And hopefully we can get Shelby out of that. Washington out of that sooner than later. And then I'll work on refreshing the forecast for the 11 o'clock show. But I think we're in pretty good shape at this point. That hasn't been the case everywhere today. Wisconsin had some massive damage earlier today. I'm going to go back to some of your comments here. Let's see. It seems like there's really not too much happening right now for there to be redevelopment. No, there won't be. And that's the trend. I mean, the development has to be there, you know, as it moves in with still what meager warming we have. But you can tell by the radar imagery that much of it is collapsing. There's only a few places still holding on to any integrity of the radar. So that chance is diminishing. I like rain, not severe. Ditto. And eventually they will go down to zero. I love the fact that you all have conversations among yourselves. That's awesome. Power's out in Elmberg and Pleasureville. Again, working your way into Henry County, seeing that. Some folks asking about their specific locations. That's hard. That opens Pandora's box. If we start doing one of those, then everybody jumps in. It's easy to tell, though, and that's what we've been pointing out. So if you're watching the stream, outside of that cluster of storms moving south of Lexington, we're in good shape. The severe weather threat is diminishing and will continue to diminish hour by hour. There really is no second wave moving in. There may be more rain. There could still be a rumble of thunder, but the threat of severe weather gets more and more limited. So will it be 0 at 11 o'clock? No, I can't rule it completely down to 0 by 11, but will it be there by 1? Yes. So every hour that goes by, the threat of severe weather goes down. And once we cross midnight, the threat of severe weather should be over. I hope that helps. That puts a timeline on it for everybody in a general sense, right? Washington Mercer County line is pretty windy, mixed with rain, thunder, and lightning. And we're seeing that on the radar. We've got vivid lightning showing up from Christopher. Always appreciate having the location of where you are. And you may have said that before. And I'm not seeing it, but it's always helpful when you give us the reports, and especially when it comes to hail or damage, the time, where the report is, and what it is. That is super helpful. And boy, we appreciate all you who give us the reports. That is helpful. Cody says, how's it going? How's Hardin County looking? We good to call it a night? Again, I have answered that in a general sense that almost everybody's good to call it a night. The threat of severe weather limiting that by the hour. Bowling, Mark Bowling, temperature southeast of Shepherdsville, 79.3, dew point 79. I know you can feel it today. I mean, this has been the year with extreme dew points, right? Today, so many of the gauges, I mean, we rarely see a dew point in the 80s. And today, several of the gauges were right at 80 degrees. That's crazy. That's rare. Some folks camping, I will pop this one on, Rough River camping in the Laurel Branch area. Again, can't rule out a little lightning with the cluster of storms moving in just north of Jasper as that sinks to the south. So we can't rule out a little lightning, but the threat of severe, I'll keep saying it, gets lower and lower with every hour. And the lightning threat will likely go in that direction too. You can even see that from the lightning count. We're 450, what's that say, 464 on that view at this point. So the lightning count likely will continue to diminish over time. It will waver some, but it in general will diminish. I'm scrolling back up to see if I see any of your comments. We asked about Rough River. Here's Patoka Lake, going to be okay. Again, seeing some showers, thunderstorms nearby, but the threat of severe weather very limited. Most will be non-existent. Appreciate Christopher jumping back in and giving the location of the lightning. He's in Clark County, Kentucky. Starlink went out for a while. So some folks having connectivity issues. I get that. It's calmed down in Georgetown. Violet sending in that. Will they cancel the thunderstorm watch? Once the threat of severe weather has passed and moved out, yes, they will cancel that. And most likely that will be canceled early. Technically, that's in place until 2 o'clock, but I suspect that this is the show for the night. So once this passes by, we'll be able to not only squash the watch, but everybody will be able to get a good night's sleep. That's good news, right? You know, last week's storms were during the afternoon and evening hours too. That makes it a lot better than having to stay up all night. Not only for us who have to be here tracking them and updating, but for folks at home so you can get some sleep. Gary says, why don't people just simply listen to what you say? Well, I suppose they're busy. You know, it's listen in one ear and out the other, probably doing a few other things while they're trying to keep up with the weather. I don't know. We're talking about it, though. That's what I know. And, you know, this is the interesting part because, you know, I'm sitting in a different office than I normally would be in, but I have most of my computers in front of me. And it's a little more clunky to work in here than it actually is in the office. And we hope to fix that soon, by the way, to where we can stream from a whole different place. But I will say that, you know, if we weren't doing the live stream, this is what we'd be doing. So you're just sort of getting a view in. It's like Big Brother. I know that's on CBS, but it's like Big Brother with cameras just stuck in the room while we're actually doing our job. Now, I'm talking more than I would be, though sometimes I talk to myself. But it's one of those conversations where this is what we'd be doing anyway if we were just tracking storms through the evening. It's like, well, okay, it's pretty much out of here. You can see the latest warning coming on, by the way. Does not include any part of the viewing area. So once 10:30 rolls around, let me pause the radar, and then I'll zoom back into it down there. We're going to move this out of Washington and swing it right down south of Danville, Lancaster, Stanford, Crab Orchard. And for the most part, while we have some wind over toward Willisburg and Mackville, the greatest wind is just south of the Harrodsburg area and over past Nicholasville. So that's also some good news. Winds picking up in Clark County, Kentucky. Light rain in Meade County. Very light rain in Meade. Let's zoom back out. I haven't talked much about Meade. In fact, I haven't talked about a lot of places because there's just not much happening. And you can see that lighter rain moving in parts of Meade County. Still holding on. This one thunderstorm up here just north of Terre Haute, still holding on. It's in an environment of its own, so it has nothing to sort of, it's going to kind of have to rain itself out, and that'll eventually happen. But that is one thunderstorm that we have. Let's just check the velocity on that just to see. Yeah, nothing. It's behind the whole system, really. That said, we go down into the metro. Let me put on the radar. You can see we do have rain far eastern Jefferson County. Nothing severe. This isn't expected to be severe from Fisherville, working your way all the way down into really parts of Shelby and Spencer counties, not far from Normandy. Lightning, not much. I'll zoom this out. You'll see all the lightning. Pop it on. There it is. A lot of lightning there. And that's making its way now south of Lexington. But Nicholasville, Harrodsburg, lots of rain, lots of lightning, some gusty winds. That's the area where we would see the greatest wind threat. Boom. Moving right through there. That's making its way where we've already had wind. I'll zoom this out. Let me turn the lightning back off. It takes up a lot of real estate. Let me go back. I want to point out to see if we have had any IMPING reports. Most of those are just rain. I'll zoom in to see if I see any damage. That's the type. So let's go to see damage. So we have a few tree limbs down across parts of southern Oldham, Franklin. Those were the only two IMPING reports that we've had. And what about local storm reports? Just bear with me here. I'll turn those on for you. These are storm reports. Again, same ones that we had queried earlier, talking about the ones out of Henry County, northern parts. That was the 61 mile per hour wind near Eminence that pushed down through Frankfort, another 61 mile per hour gust in Franklin County, and then Lawrenceburg. Haven't had anything since then, at least reported. So that's good news. And not a lot further to the north. So there just hasn't been a ton. Now, if I zoom this out, you're going to see the storms earlier today. Remember, if you were watching in our earlier newscast, we were talking about, I'm going to zoom this out where I can see the two clusters. We're talking about as these storms moved into northern Indiana, there was one cluster that came down through Indianapolis and moved towards Cincinnati. That was that branch of the storms. And then we had a little bit of a tail develop, and that's what moved through our area. So it sort of developed off of one another. And then we had this one in Chicago that had developed, and that one just sort of drifted south. That was the one that continually produced, and you can see it even had the tornado on it along the Indiana border. And that's the one that's down here now. So we have been tracking really 3 clusters of storms tonight in general that all originated farther to the north, where we had some massive damage across parts of Wisconsin. That was wild. That was crazy. Let me see if I can show you what that looked like earlier today as these storms moved across Wisconsin. And there you can see some of the damage. This is a large tree coming into the 911 center. This was blown down, completely blocking the road, and that was over in Trimble County. All right, I'm going to see if I can pop up some of this video of what it looked like in Menasha. And again, this is coming in from Wisconsin. And you can see just that intense damage that was caused by that tornado that was on the ground for some time. I haven't seen, how long or how far this went, but I mean, you can see the video is still moving. You could see it there. The people are walking. The power lines are down. Some people are running. I mean, that is tragic. I haven't heard of how many injuries or fatalities. I'm sure there had to have been some, at least injuries. But you can see it did not go without touching a lot of homes. That's rough. And that wasn't the only damage. You can see some of this damage also coming in where trees were on top of homes, trampolines thrown up against the side of homes and on the roofs in some cases. That was some of the damage, not taken from the drone, but on the ground.
And the
Gives a
sirens
good
went
view of
off,
what it looked like.
and my daughter and I grabbed a cat, went in the basement, got really quiet, like our ears started to pop, almost like we're on an airplane or something, and it was intense. We heard a lot of loud noises, and we still had a cat upstairs, so I was a little worried about that. My daughter looked up and said, "Oh my goodness," and ran back downstairs because she could see the trees coming down.
Yeah, can you imagine? You can just see they've got the front loaders moving some of the trees, the power lines. It'll take a while to recover from that. But that's one of the things ongoing, and you can see what that looks like across Wisconsin. You'll hear more and more about that in the days to come as those folks try to recover and bounce back from what has happened. All right. You'll notice that warning over near Terre Haute, and Crispy Brisket's pointing that out as well, dropped to a special weather statement there. So, yeah. So technically, and did they redraw that? I think they just redrew that with Washington County still in it. So technically, you're still going to see Washington County, the far eastern part of Washington County, in that warning. I'll put the velocity back on. Let's just see if we can see anything. Not a lot. So, I mean, when we're looking at that, Willisburg's out of it, Mackville, Cornishville, that's the only part. What's in our viewing area? Oh, hang on. I meant to turn the tool on to draw. There it is. This right here. That's it. So really no one, because that's pretty much out of the area. So from Cardwell to Battle, Mackville, that wind is moving away. The wind is still strong in places, though, as you approach, say, Bryantsville, Buckeye, Baldwin, that zone. Still some very strong wind just to our east. But that's moving out of the wave viewing area. And no other warnings, even the one farther to the north. So the show is about over. Still seeing some rain. And we got these pockets of rain on top of areas that have had rain. That's tolerable. These are all moving, and we don't have a lot of heavy rain stacked up behind it. So when we look at some of our rainfall totals, you can see in the higher totals, we've picked up an inch and a half, but most have seen far less than that. This is a good idea of where we had the gap. I mean, you have one area of rain go from, say, Cincinnati to the far eastern side of Jefferson County, and then another one that went across our far westernmost counties, but really it was southern Illinois, southwest Indiana, and west Kentucky, where Evansville had over 2 inches of rain. So this area in between got gapped, and that just means we didn't see the heavier storms. It didn't happen here. No complaints, right? All right, back to the radar, just to pop it on here. And I'm going to wrap things up because I do need a little bit of time to refresh for the 11 o'clock the data that's come in this evening that I haven't had a chance to look at. Hopefully we were a little help walking you through these storms. We always like to do it in a calm fashion. Even, with days like today, which are somewhat marginal, we did have thousands without power. So I know it's impactful to some folks. But hopefully we were able to walk you through that and you were prepared for what hit. And if you weren't in the zone that picked up the severe weather, count your blessings. And, hopefully you knew it wasn't going to hit you. We knew it was just that really the 2 areas of concern, but really the one was within the viewing area. So I'll look at your final comments here. Lightning is pretty crazy in Gravel Switch. That's down far eastern Marion County. Yeah, a lot of folks talking about the video we just watched. So there you see Danny Boy saying devastating, praying for those folks. Yeah, boy, it was devastating. Leaving Berea for Fort Knox. Take it easy. Be careful. Those storms should pass you pretty quick, though. All right, I will say good night. These storms are out of our viewing area. You want one more check of the power outages before I go? We'll do that. So from our view here, let's go to the power outages. I'll pop these on. Takes a second for that map to load. Let's go to the highest first, and that is Henry County. 1789. That's almost 40% of the reporting customers tracked without power. That's a pretty big deal. That was some powerful wind that moved through there. Down into Franklin County, 847, about 12%. And then parts of Trimble County, 13.7%, 493. In Shelby County, 775. What about Oldham? We've got 475, not bad. Let's go to Carroll, 121, not bad. Again, this is where that apex of that bow was moving, right? We could see it right through here. Also impacted parts of western Jefferson County, Indiana, 275, not bad. Scott County up toward Austin, 242. Seymour and Crothersville, so it wasn't all of Jackson County. In fact, it was the far eastern part of Jackson County and the far southwestern part of Jennings County, 279 in Jackson, and Jennings had 130. So hardest hit, obviously, you can tell that by the color code, Henry County, Franklin, and Trimble. That was the zone that continues sinking to the south. I'm sure Lexington has some power outages, parts of Anderson, parts of Boyle, parts of all of those areas off to the south and west of Lexington, and eventually maybe to the east as well as you work your way farther to the south. So that's what we have in terms of power outages. All right, listen, I'll see you tonight on Wave News at 11 o'clock. We'll have an update then. Threat of severe weather ending. Good news is we have a few thousand without power. Could have been far worse, and hopefully no damage, at least not a lot of damage outside of a few trees down. We've seen how bad it could be with those storms farther to the north. Thinking about those folks tonight. We'll have an update on our forecast tonight at 11 o'clock on Wave News. Hope you have a great night. Appreciate you jumping on the live stream. We're always here. We always say that we're proud to have Louisville's first of many things. And that includes the first live stream. We developed this years ago. You can find that on Wave Weather Now, which streams on all of the digital devices like Roku, Apple TV, the Amazon Fire Stick, and of course on our apps, both the Wave News and the Wave Weather app. Have a good night, calmer night. You can see what it looks like from South Louisville. So this is from the Kentucky Kingdom camera. I was looking at some of the lightning earlier. Can't even see that anymore. Have a good night, everybody. Appreciate you watching.